this work session of the Forest Grove City Council. The topic is goals and objective refinement. Present are all city councilors. City staff is in the audience. There will be no public comment taken, and the council will take no formal action. So I'm going to pass it over to Ashley at this point. Ashley, are you good getting us started? We cannot hear you right now. I don't. 1 minute, please. Okay, do you want to try again? Nope. We still cannot hear you. So I think it's on our end. Just 1 minute.
Could you talk again, Ashley?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Excellent. Well, I think if Jesse, if you wanted to offer any opening remarks or any comments to the council before we begin.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is our work session to kind of seek more clarity on some of the goals and objectives. We always have an annual retreat, and then after the annual retreat, we put together as best we can what we heard during the retreat, and this is an opportunity to refine the goals and objectives that are before you today. So I think Ashley is going to kind of take us through each of these. It's a time to ask questions. It's a time to clarify, to add, to refine, to take off, combine, whatever you would like to do. Following this process, the council rules do stipulate that we have to approve the goals and objectives by March. The purpose of approving the goals and objectives is so that staff can populate a budget. Council is certainly welcome to approve it before then. It gives staff a little bit more time, but the council rules do say by March. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, do you want to take it over at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks so much for having us back. We had a great retreat with you all to review your goals. And as City Manager Jesse Vanderzanden mentioned, we've been working to refine the language. And so that's what we'll be presenting with you tonight. There were also a number of new proposals for new items that came up in the goal setting retreat. So we'll go over those as well. And just to clarify intentions around how a new item gets added officially to the list, that would be through either a majority or consensus or majority on the council. So those items I'll note as we go through the list. And so what I'm going to do, I'll share my screen and it'll show the Excel spreadsheet that lists all the 4 goals with their listed outcomes and then the objectives listed on the side. And so that's how we'll move through it. So it'll truly be a work session. We'll be working through this document together kind of item by item. But before I begin, does anyone have any questions about the process that's been outlined?
I'm seeing no questions.
Okay. Well, if any come up in the throughout, don't hesitate to stop me. All right. I'm going to share my screen. I tried to make it big enough. So let me know, first of all, if everyone can read the font.
No, we cannot read it at all.
No? Okay, let's make it bigger. Okay.
Keep going, please.
All right, we're really far off?
Yeah, that looks.
Okay, let me
I think we're
scroll
good
over.
now, Ashley. Thank you.
Are we good now? Okay, let me see if I can get my window a little bit bigger. You're challenging the width of my monitor here. Okay. All right, so let's start with the first goal on the list, which is address long-term growth and support housing and economic stability. The outcomes for this goal would be proactive and strategic planning that meets community needs, robust business community, and environmentally sustainable policies and programs. So just to orient you to what I was speaking to earlier about which items are new, anything that's highlighted in green came up was a proposal for a new item. So like I've noted over here, it needs consensus to move forward. And then these are all of the refinements that were made through the retreat process. So we'll just go through one by one. And if there's any questions or comments, we can work through those. So the first one is to initiate policy discussions on an urban reserve growth strategy. This is a continuation of the goal from the previous year, and then we refined it to this language. Are there any questions about this goal or this objective or any clarity needed?
No, I don't see any. Wait, actually, yes. 1 minute, please.
If there's a theme to my comments, it's the clarity. So when we say it, initiate, what's the probable work product?
So from what I understood, initiating a policy discussion would really be probably having a work session or a series of work sessions to try and define what the scope would be of a potential urban reserve growth plan, and then initiating eventually an urban reserve plan. There's a lot of different elements to an urban reserve growth strategy right now, especially vis-a-vis Metro, vis-a-vis some other communities that are putting in urban reserves within the urban growth boundary. So the policy discussion, I think, would be to get educated, have some awareness, and then try to figure out kind of a general policy direction before we go down a formal path of developing an urban reserve growth plan, if that makes sense. So I would envision probably one to a series of work sessions with the council to really kind of unpack all of that. There's a fair amount there.
It's primarily education, and I'm thinking that this is by June of 26. Right?
Yes, this would likely occur by June. It might spill a little bit over in terms of getting the scope refined, but generally speaking, I think we could try and accomplish it within the next 3 to 6 months. Yeah. Good.
Other questions or comments for this one, or are we good to move forward? No, you guys are sharing a microphone, so it's a little challenging.
I think we're good to move forward. Yeah, sorry about that little delay.
No, that's all right. All right. The second one here is to update the economic opportunities analysis and the economic development strategic plan. Previously, these were hosted in two separate objectives, but the council refined them to combine them as they're connected, and the economic development strategic plan is flowing from the economic opportunities analysis, which is going to be completed later this year.
Questions on this one? Councillor Schimmel.
Same theme. I noticed jumping ahead to the third one, you used descriptors like adopt, implement. So just looking for the context of update. Just circulating a draft.
And we have to hold it, though.
I think this is implying that it would be update and adopt. So if the council would like to change it to update and adopt, we could easily do it. But it's for both.
Yeah, and the context of the clarity is that as we're going through the year, looking at these, something comes up to prevent us from accomplishing what we actually intended, versus trying to get clarity on ambiguous language. So if it's adopt the main descriptor of what we want to accomplish in 2026, I'd recommend we capture that.
The adopt, though, is on, it says 3 years, so adopt and implement. Oh,
I think we're on number 2. So would you like
I think
to,
what-
would you need to adopt the economic opportunities analysis also? Because I could add language here, update and adopt both of them. I'm just not sure what the process is.
I think what Counselor Martinez was asking is from staff, is it doable to have it adopted in a year? Is there consensus to add adopt to goal 2? Okay,
What do you mean? Because it's already on number 2.
Well, so I updated it after Councillor Schimmel's comment for, for additional clarity. And so I added the adopt, but previously it just said update the economic opportunities analysis and the economic development strategic plan. But then there was a comment that we if there was consensus on the council, we could change it to update and adopt. So I was changing it there to check and see if we had consensus to show everyone where the adopt word would land in the sentence.
yeah, we have consensus here, Ashley. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. All right, what about, so now we've got number 3, update, adopt, and implement the comprehensive plan. Does that one have enough clarity, or is there?
Any
Yeah,
questions?
go ahead, Mayor.
Any questions?
On the implement portion, I wonder if we might actually want to refine this a little bit more and say begin implementation of comprehensive plan, because it seems to me like it wouldn't be possible to do a full implementation of everything that comes out of a new fully revised comp plan.
Is there consensus from the council to add begin implementing the comprehensive plan? The word begin, I'm seeing 3 head nods. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there's consensus to add that.
Okay. Implementation. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So now we've moved on to the 2 proposals for new items to be added. And so the first is to host a workshop on ADU development. Is there consensus to add this to the list, or any questions for clarity or additional context that you'd like to add?
So Counselor Schimmel has some comments, and then I have
certainly
some.
support the item. A couple of clarities. One is if staff would prefer to focus strictly on ADU versus alternative housing options, and yes, the second question is whether that workshop would produce a toolkit that you could post and people could pull.
We didn't know. I think this still needs to be refined. So whatever the council would like on this, one of the thoughts on just doing a workshop is that might be something that CCE could host, and then staff could just help inform. So I think that raises a question whether you want it to be an objective of the council or if it just gets assigned to CCE, which the council can do. If it's not holding a workshop, then what does it look like? Is it,
Just 2 things. This could be just a brainstorming session, but then also, do we want to, before we approve adding things as we're going through this, do we want to go through the whole thing? Because what if we get to a point where we want to add everything and we don't have room to add everything and get them all done? Just a comment. I'm not sure how many we added.
That's a good point. We can go through all of the existing objectives with refinement and then come back, or I can show you if you want some just some context for how much green is on the sheet. Let me just
ask a question. So when you're, Councilor Schimmel, when you mentioned a toolkit, one of the things that we have done is we have reduced the fees for ADU development. I think there was some discussion about the toolkit, meaning like there would be a standard potentially design that somebody could look at and implement. And I know that other municipalities have those. Those can vary depending on the size of your lot, size of your house, et cetera. I mean, we can publish certainly some of those. I think that's just something we can probably find and go do and put it on the website. If that's what you're looking for, I think that's something we can just update the website to do. Yeah.
That toolkit, yeah, definitely included whatever half dozen approved plans plus how to, just a step by step through the planning with what these.
So is there direction from council that it should be an objective, or is it something that staff has direction on and can update the website and provide resources?
I think we're still discussing this one.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
just say that I'm clarifying the objective, not just we can adopt it like they.
Yeah. I have a comment about clarification though too, because I thought this item also involved the idea of coming to actually having a set of pre-approved plans and a streamlined process for someone to go into the building department and get approval for something like that. So that to me does seem like a city council objective that would need to be added because it would involve work sessions and then actually updating code.
So would it be more, I guess, how does approve and publish ADU development standards or an ADU toolkit or something like that? Would that be more accurate? Okay. How about staff takes that back? I think we can get that down. We can figure that out. So.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So just very quickly, if there could possibly be a timeline for that, like.
Okay.
I just want to double check. Is there consensus to add this to the list? Okay, I see a thumbs up, 3 nods, 4, 5. Okay, there's consensus to add this one, Ashley. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. And then this next one that needs consensus to be added is clarify strategic direction for downtown redevelopment and partnerships.
You want to talk about something?
So during the retreat, there was a lot of discussion about Main Street program, about downtown projects, about partnerships, about the city's roles and responsibilities in those particular programs, partnerships, and projects. And so I think we were trying to figure out something that kind of could cover all of that, so to speak, and figure out kind of, have a discussion with the council about where does the city fit and what is our role and responsibility, not only vis-a-vis the Main Street program, but vis-a-vis downtown development, vis-a-vis, after the Glow Up project, like who's responsible for maintaining what, those types of issues. So I think it was just kind of a way to try and capture all of that.
And the only other thing that I would add is that with the development of the Forest Grow Forward community vision, a lot of those themes and potential like implementation and ideas are going to be folded into that vision. And so it allows you a little more flexibility to develop that strategic direction in alignment with the information that's coming through from the community vision process.
Can I ask a clarifying question with that, Ashley? So in terms of, and I think Ashley and Jesse, but in terms of workload and timeline, are you then suggesting that even if this doesn't get on as an objective, that it will be addressed in the long-term strategic plan? And because one of the things I think, Councilor Gustafson brought this up too, is being aware that we do have limited staffing resources. And so to have like expectations of being able to get things done. And so the comprehensive plan, I mean, I'm kind of looking for 1 to 2 year goals, and then the long force growth forward, that strategic plan will then come next and drive our goals, objectives, our budgeting, all those things. I don't know if, I mean, I just want to point that out. Or
Yeah, it's that. So go ahead. There's a comment.
Councilor Schimmel.
I absolutely support the objective. I get the sense of acuity. Main Street program, in particular, when the city rolls that with the programs that he does, that all wrapped together. It could be good work session.
Other comments, discussion? Okay, so then I'm going to ask for consent. Is there consensus to put it on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there's consensus to add it.
Okay, we'll add that one. All right, and then just in thinking about our process and looking at our time too, I think what I'm going to propose for this next goal area, which is the ensure inclusive, accessible, and sustainable community. Let's look at all of the ones in white together and let me know if there's any clarity that's needed on any of those. So I'll review them all together. So the Adopt a 2040 Vision and Action Plan, that's ongoing work. Then there are 8, hold a work session to discuss DEI policies and programs and evaluate funding options and implement the urban renewal plan. Any questions about any of those 3 before we move on to the proposals for new items?
So do we have a draft 2040 vision and action plan?
Not yet. That's being developed through the community visioning process. We have the beginnings of that of the vision and the action plan, but with the project schedule, it's scheduled to be adopted or brought to council and to be adopted in the summer, in July of 2025.
Wanted to make sure there was enough time. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other? Sorry, same thing. Any other questions about the refined goals? Okay, I think we can move on to the new.
All right, we'll go through these one by one. So we've got inventory all unfunded mandates, develop a community academy, evaluate city council accessibility and compensation options, evaluate staff capacity in administration and parks maintenance, and then create a parking management plan and conduct an efficiency study. And so these in this goal are the outcomes are centered around community growth and enhancement that considers the needs of the diverse community. So this first one, inventory all unfunded mandates. Well, I guess I'll just say it this way. Are there any questions about any of these? Maybe starting at the top and then we'll work our way down.
Yeah, Councilor Falconer.
I'm hoping that the person who suggested inventory all unfunded mandates could maybe give.
I think our group brought that up, but after thinking about it and processing it, I think the League of Oregon Cities is doing some of that work and we can do that. So I don't think that I would, propose taking that off the list. But it really is a huge thing. The school district has a lot of unfunded. There's a lot of things. And so coming up with a collective voice and that with our legislative body is important, but I don't think I think that can be found through other avenues. The state legislature passes lots of House bills that we have to follow that are unfunded that cost us money. So just knowing how much.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And again, it could be a goal or it could be something that staff puts together and presents either in a packet or in a work session or just in resources. But it's at the point of does it rise to the level of needing to be a council goal or at the objective level?
Yeah, I'm proposing that we take it off. But
I'm good with taking it
Guys,
out. The only
Okay.
additional context that came to mind was the federal executive orders, what the implications are of actually losing taxes.
mhm. Okay. All right. So we
Well,
can.
yeah, it's rolling out really fast, so it's hard to.
Okay. Well, we'll remove that one. What about, so the next one is this Develop Community Academy.
Yeah, I would really like, so that came out of our group as well. So other communities call it Assistance Academy. I like Community Academy. It's just a way, it's like, we have a lot of vacancies with our boards and commissions. We have a lot of people like upset with the city about different things. Sometimes the school district and like, why aren't you building more schools? You're building, anyways, a community academy allows people to participate in their local government, get to know us, understand how it works, and then hopefully become involved in the process, right? Want to volunteer on a board or commission, want to run for city council. And so I think there's a huge value in it. So I would really like it to stay. But I don't know if there's any questions or a consensus for that.
Yeah. Any question? Yeah. Questions or consensus?
Okay, Jesse.
Thank you. In some of those other municipalities, Mayor, was it that where you had to like register for a class and it was like 50 people kind of thing? And then was it over, I'm guessing probably 5 sessions, 5 to 8 sessions or something? I just want to kind of get a scope of it so we know potentially what to plan for. So, okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
So with the Develop a Community Academy, who would be putting on or managing the academy? And if some of it is about, information, I think we need to improve our communication skills. So I think that would really help with that piece of it. But my concern is putting another workload on people that don't have the bandwidth.
Well, that was a great idea.
Okay, go ahead.
Teed me up. Just being the liaison for CCE, I would hope they could help absorb some of the burden in developing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think CCE works with, and I think, I've spoken with our communication manager and who also sees the value in it as well. So it really would, I think, actually help with our bandwidth within the city and communication and engagement. Is there consensus to add this? Okay, cool. I see consensus. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then evaluate city council accessibility and compensation options.
What was Jesse, what's the accessibility? Hang on.
I think the context for the accessibility was accessibility to serve and run for city council. So I think the accessibility was related more to the compensation as opposed to like ADA accessibility.
Okay, are there any questions about this goal? Or objective, sorry, it's an objective. Any questions? Is there consensus to add this? Yeah, I'm seeing consensus, yes.
Okay. All right. And then the next one is around evaluating staff capacity in administration and parks maintenance. And so this came from a discussion around, potentially exploring a 32-hour work week, which felt pretty
No.
specific.
That was two
No?
different discussions. That was two
Those two different
actually,
ones?
That's two different.
Oh, okay.
This came in the discussion that we have administrative staff that are one person is doing 2 full-time positions. And then and within the parks maintenance, we've have new parks, new acres, and we haven't hired any parks maintenance. So this was actually the exact opposite of reducing staff hours. This was the goal, because I brought it up. I'm just not trying to be rude, but the goal is to increase staffing to because we have increased service needs. Sorry.
All right. Any questions about this one, or for clarity for staff?
Any questions? Is there a consensus for this one to stay? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we have consensus for this one. You guys talking
Okay.
about your
Is
workload.
there all right, is there consensus for the creative parking management plan?
Like shared, like, so we're hearing from downtown, like some business owners and some community members that there's not enough parking in downtown. And so I would like to explore like shared lot agreements, like really have a very in-depth like talk about like basically get our traffic review board, like what can we really do to try to mitigate some of these parking issues, like maybe a permit lot that's city behind Van Dyke's, like behind, right? Should that be permit for business owners? Like a parking management plan just kind of encompasses all those options of really like figuring out how we can better meet the parking demands that we have in our downtown core. Is what I was thinking with that. Is there questions?
I would recommend making this more of a partnership with the City Club because that's on our roadmap as well. So, I mean, we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4 that we're adding, hopefully 5. So if we can take this either off of it and make it something that Miles and the City Club is working on together to bring back to council, that's great. If you feel like we need to leave it on here so that we have it on our goals also, that's great. Just a comment.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I think too that's, you know, hopefully there's partnerships with Pacific with a few agencies, but I also like hesitant to like take like there is a responsibility from the city. I think it's important to leave it as a goal for this or an objective for the city so we can say, hey, we're working on this with our partners. Or, you know, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
There are other comments on council
Yeah,
for the parking management plan?
just to maybe kind of agree to your point, I think, you know, because of what I could see coming out of a parking management plan and a strategy for shared parking would be a lot of wayfinding and information and improvements in the right of way. And so I think you would have to have city partnership and you'd have to have a little bit more of a policy discussion around that as opposed to just a facilitation by a separate nonprofit organization.
Yeah, there's also connections too with the parking management plan with the with your economic development strategic plan and other like code updates. So
yeah,
recommended that it's.
Sorry, Ashley. This would be something when we talked about that responsibility with the city and the City Club and how we need to kind of unpack that. These are all things that Main Street programs own and then work with the city on policy. So wayfinding is also in that roadmap. So although I agree, we can absolutely keep it on here to keep it in our purview and have it as a goal and objective. It's just that this would be definitely a partnership that was managed on the Main Street program side.
The only thing I would mention is we did a parking management study 3 years ago, I think. And so actually this would be kind of, and they did make some recommendations in that study from a demand management perspective. So this would actually kind of, we have a reference point for this in terms of putting together a potential plan. One of them was wayfinding. I don't remember some of the other ones, but so we do have a reference point. That's all.
All right. So for the purposes of adding it to the council goals and objectives, is there consensus to leave it as is? I'm not hearing consensus to change it.
I'm seeing consensus to leave it as is.
Okay. All right. And then this one on the conductive efficiency study, I believe that's the one that came out of the discussion for the 32-hour work week, which felt too specific. And so if the goal, and also trying to keep in mind that goals and when you're setting goals, thinking about what's the outcome that you're trying to see and thinking about setting the what, and then staff is implementing the how. So by shifting this language to conducting an efficiency study, it's focusing on that discussion that the council had earlier in the retreat around efficiency with efficacy. And so it allows the ability to, look at best practices, see where there's opportunities for improvements within the city, and then develop different options that then staff could come to council later for further discussion and analysis. So it just provides a little more flexibility and
Yeah, Counselor Schimmel.
opportunities for discussion.
I definitely support the objective. I would emphasize efficacy. What I would want staff to evaluate foremost is the current time achieving the objective, or the effectiveness of the initiative or the work, versus it being limited to what they can.
No, I'm not following you. Sorry.
Well, we're inheriting things that were adopted, approved, implemented before, and for example, with the parks, when they say they need 9 people to take care of parks, there's only 5, and then there's an effectiveness problem that we need to solve first before we ask park maintenance folks to get more efficient about doing their maintenance. So, and that could be true for any number of, like, planning, public works.
I guess what I was wondering on this particular one is what would be the purpose of the efficiency study? Like, where's it going? What's the desired outcome of an efficiency study? In some departments, you can find pretty commonly accepted metrics for effectiveness and or efficiency. In other ones, it's very difficult to kind of find some type of potential measurement. And so I guess I'm just kind of, I wanted to get a little bit more clarity, I think, from the council about what's the scope of this study? What does it look like? Is it all departments? Is it one department? Is it, because that's what I'm just kind of curious about. And what would be the kind of ultimate potential outcome? Is it number of staff? Is it how we're doing business? Anyways, those are just some of the questions I was curious about. Just a little more.
So I brought this one up a couple years ago, and then this year. So with the amount that our residents are paying in taxes versus the amount that we're able to get done, it feels to me, by looking at other cities, that we're not able to get as much done with the resources that we have. Resources meaning finances and human resources. So when you do efficiency studies, you're looking at both tangible and intangible. So you're looking at your people resources and your financial resources. I always come back to, because it's one of them that just glaring, the street sweeping that you and I have talked about before. There isn't a schedule adhered to. The street sweeper just goes out when they feel like it, and then if the garbage cans are out, they drive away because there's garbage cans out. There's not a schedule there. So I am going to assume that is the same or similar in many departments. And so all businesses go through times where they have their own efficiency study. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a consultant. I think the best thing to do is start internally and put goals and say, let's cut back 10%. How do we cut back on time 10%? Show me the time efficiency that you saved by changing your processes or becoming more accurate with your processes, because we are not getting any more money, and it is going to get worse with this new administration. We have got to think about this. Those are just my ideas.
Are there other? Yeah, go ahead.
Just clarifying.
Yeah, get closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, an important context for me on the efficacy side was looking at the next levy. So can you remind me when we go to the ballot again for the next operating levy?
Go to the ballot.
Yeah, so that was an important context for me. So I apologize if it was poorly connected to Councilor Gustafson's, but it was about preparing and educating the public on what we need to operate the city. So that would be a 2-year exercise, not.
So I think one of the clarifications that I was maybe looking for is we're a full service city, and so we offer actually more services than any municipality in Washington County. And I know during the budget process, if staff is ever looking at potentially trying to add staff in any certain department, whether it be Parks and Rec, whether it be Public Works, whether it be library, we do efficiency studies zeroed in on that staff. Last year, remember, we did IT and we did something for finance. We compared it to 4 cities of our size. We looked at their staff. We were far under what their staff was, and so we added some staff in those areas. We looked at number of users. So I guess the only, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't do an efficiency study or an effectiveness study. I am suggesting that when we go to add staff, we do that study. It's focused on that particular service and that particular area. And so that's the only reason I was trying to kind of clarify the scope, because if it's for the entirety of the city, then it's what services are we offering, because there's multiple services in each of those. And so if Councilor Gustafson, to your point, if we want to look at street sweeping and an efficiency study for that, we can do that. And we can zero in on that. If it's something else, we can kind of zero in on that. If it's comprehensive to the city, that's just a different scope of a study. That's a much bigger kind of undertaking than strategically looking at certain sections. Does that make sense, Councilor? So.
Just, I would think that it would be more efficient to do it by the different departments, just because all the obligations and tasks that they need to do are different, So I would think, if you do the whole thing, I think it needs to be department.
I guess my question is whether this is these are mostly city council goals that then are sort of have something to do with a policy question. And I'm not sure that this one is a city council goal. I'm like maybe Jesse to hear your thoughts on that. Where would the interaction with city council be on this goal? I'm not sure. It's not clear to me that this is a city council goal.
Musical microphone. So, it's on my list. Microphone, staff meeting. No. I was going to make a joke about an efficiency study, but I won't about microphones. So I think our commitment to the council is during the budget process, if we ever look at adding resources, or conversely, if we have a downturn in resources. So if there's a service that we are doing that we are no longer providing, we look at what those metrics are and what those efficiencies are as best as we can. We report that to the budget committee. And so I don't know if that answers your question, Councilor Falconer, but that's why I was kind of asking earlier, kind of where's this going? What's that policy nexus with the council that wouldn't otherwise be at the budget committee, if that makes sense? So that would be specific to city council. So.
Are there additional, sorry, I'm trying to figure out where the mic is going. Are there additional comments on this one? Do we feel like we need to?
We have, someone was talking, right? It's okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Ashley.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, the context for me was looking out at the next levy. So if the budget cycles take care of that, then we're okay. I'm okay with it.
Okay, so let's finish up with this one, and then we'll probably just schedule, because we're running up against a time. So we'll schedule a second work session to refine the rest of them. But so with this last one is, what's the consensus of the council? I'm hearing some people say drop it, some people say I have 3 drop. Undecided from Councilor Marshall.
Okay, so I can't, nobody's convinced me to let go of this yet. Good try, Jesse. But I mean, there's a lot of things and to your comment, I get that, where it's not a policy we're talking about, unless we're going to make a policy to always do this. And we have things on our goals and objectives that aren't policies. So that's actually something to think about that I didn't realize. But if we can have some sort of agreement that we are doing efficiency studies by department, and if one of us sees a problem, do we need to bring it to the council so that we all agree to say, hey, Jesse, we would like you to do this? Or can one of us go to Jesse and say, I need to work with you on a street sweeping process because it's driving Councilor Gustafson bonkers?
So what if we do this? It's not necessarily a study, but it's close. What if during the budget process this year, we put in what are some of our commonly accepted metrics in each of our departments? And then it's transparent, it's informative, and each of you have it. We've done this for the most part. This is already kind of there, so we're not inventing something new. We've done it for public works, we've done it for fire, for police, for library. We've done it for all of our departments. It would just be a more organized way of reporting out to the council. And if the council has concerns about it in the budget process, we can talk about it then. Is that okay?
I did want to answer Councilor Gustafson's question too. I think if at any point for council rules, even if something's not on our goals and objective, a councilor can bring it to council, have a motion, get consensus, and then add it, right? Like this is the way it goes. So, I think too, like sometimes when we go through objectives, we're like, oh, what if this thing comes up? But there are systems in place to refine the direction of the council. Okay, so I'm hearing that there's consent. Well, I got over to this side. So I had 3 on this side for dropping it. And then Councilor Marshall.
If we're getting the information, like we're saying before we go through budget, I'm okay with taking it off as long as we have the information prior to doing the budget. That's my goal, is to have that information so we can make a decision.
Okay.
I think it is our responsibility to make sure that our city is running efficiently and effectively with the funds that we have. So.
Okay, so there's
All right,
consensus to remove it from
That's
the
right,
goals
okay.
and objectives, and then staff will bring it, give information before the budget process.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it okay? And then I'm going to adjourn this work session for right now. And is that okay with you, Ashley? I'm sorry we did not get all the way through it.
Yes, not a problem. No, we can reschedule another work session to cover the rest of them.
Okay, thank you, Ashley, so much. Sorry for, making you come back another time, but it is what it is.
No, that's no problem. No, it's good to have the discussion. It's good to have consensus. And so there's clarity. That's the whole point of these things. So we can adjust, and I just want to make sure everyone feels good about the level of discussion and having clarity. So no problem with that.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'm going to adjourn this work session of the Forest Grove City Council on goals and objectives. And I'm going to invite Brian Pohl, and I don't know if Miles Blowock. And a few audience members. So I'm going to, okay. You guys have your, it'd be easier if you both, are you going to talk? Are you both talking? I was going to say, if you both talk, you should just sit by each other. Whoever is talking should.
Quick opening remark. So about a year ago, we implemented 2 new programs the council approved for tourism. It was the sponsorship program and the capital art program. Also, there was the art program. This is just an opportunity to review the programs, what we've done, and take comments from council about how to update them, amend them. We're going in the right direction if we're not. That's all.
We have a PowerPoint here. Mariah, are you loading up the PowerPoint? Cool. All right. Well, thank you all. As Jesse mentioned, this is a chance to just talk about TLT and sort of what it's doing and where it's going. And just kind of doing a review. Next slide, please. To discuss all the programs that are funded by the TLT. And then, as Jesse said, these programs were created about a year ago. And just want to see if council wants to maintain them or if we want to make changes to them. By way of background, it's a busy slide. I'm not going to read all of it for you. But in 2016, the county amended the ordinance that enables the TLT to allow local municipalities to keep 100% of what they collect. And in 2017, the council approved ordinance 2017-13 to establish a 2.5% transient lodging tax. Started to collect that in 2018. Fast forward to 2023, and council passed resolution 2023-52, establishing 3 new tourism programs, as Jesse mentioned, the tourism event sponsorship program, the capital grant program, and the art program. And then in 2024, the council had a work session in April to refine these programs. Slide, please. But just for your information, this is what we are charging right now. Other cities we are the lowest in Washington County, I guess tied for the lowest at 2.5%. That's on top of the Washington County's 9% that's being charged for TLT. Every 0.5% equates to about $25,000. It's not obviously on the nose, that's approximate. You can see our collections over the years, dating back to 2020. It has grown, peaking in 2022, 2023, and then sort of coming back a little bit, back to earth in 23, 24, and 24, 25. Next slide, please. As you know, a municipality can impose a tax on transient lodging at any rate. There's no, I'm surprised to learn that. There's no limit on what a municipality can charge. Under state law, 30% of that TLT revenue can be used for the general fund or whatever you'd like to, and 70% has to go back into tourism marketing efforts or capital tourism, tourism sorts of efforts. Our TLT expenditures right now are broken out in this lovely pie chart that Miles put together. You'll see 40% goes to marketing, 40% to the sponsorships, 10% to our capital program, and 10% to our art program. Slide, please. Just to remind you also that we contracted with J. Ray Marketing, and then also the Chamber of Commerce, who manages the Discover Forest Grove website. And that contract would expire in June 30th of this year. Last year, the website received 14,485 views. It has 1,254 Instagram followers, and we've had an increase of profile visits of 85%. Obviously, the purpose of the program is the tourism sponsorship program is to provide financial assistance to different events within the city. These are some of the examples that the tourism sponsorship program has funded. Next slide, please. As you can see, it's up to $5,000 per event. These are the criteria you see right here. But it is a healthy program. It has been taken advantage of quite a bit and enabled a lot of community events to take place. The criteria then that are up there, I'll just point out a couple to you that a portion of the attendees will will be expected to travel from outside Forest Grove. That would result in overnight hotel stays. We have to receive your application 90 days before the event. The city's maximum sponsorship is $2,500. Is that right?
It's 5,000.
That's what 5,000, or the platinum level sponsorship, whatever the highest sponsorship level is, we will provide. If there are not sponsorship levels, we will provide up to $2,500. Next slide. We're also running the capital grants program. That's up to $2,500 in reimbursable expenses for the purchase of capital expenses related to tourism. These are only available for nonprofits, which is important to note. And that's $2,500 per organization annually. The total, they could have several different applications be funded, up to a total of $2,500. Again, that's funded at 10% of the annual TLT revenues. 4 grants were awarded in 2024. The art program is dedicated funding directly to the Forest Grove Arts Commission to increase the city's supply of public art. It has to be used for installation art or murals. That's also 10% of the annual TLT. This gets to our discussion slide, the point where I stop talking, but I guess, are there questions? Are there any changes you guys want to make to the TLT program? And are there any council or any areas the council wants staff to focus on this year?
So I had one suggestion, and probably needs to be like worked out with the council, and then a question for council. So can we go back to the sponsorship slide? So when it says event organizers must produce marketing materials, and those materials must include the city, I think it's also important that at the event, it shows that the city sponsored it. So like, I want to like clean that up a little bit, because that's pretty vague. Like, you could put a Facebook ad that says the city, and then that's it. And it would still meet that criteria. But when people come, like, so I'm going to give you a little history too, like 2 years, because this is something that I've been, I'm really proud of. And I think I was always looking for a way for the city to support our events downtown and our events within the community. And I remember going to the corn roast, and the school district sponsored it. The city of Cornelius sponsored it, and it's in our downtown. And I was like heartbroken. But so I think it's really, really important that these events that are downtown say sponsored by the city of Forest Grove. And so I would like to see that added. And I don't know if we say like all marketing material must have our sponsorship on it, or there must be sponsorship at the event and on any additional marketing we do. But I think that really is important. So I don't know if there's consensus. I'm seeing consensus from.
So when you say all marketing, that means everybody would have to have custom banners made.
Yeah, what I said was either we require it at the event, or we say all marketing. Like, I was just opening up some ideas for discussion, but I just think I think at the event it should say that we sponsored the event. Like, that's my number one criteria. Did you?
I was going to say, is there any way for the city to actually get a banner that just says sponsored by the city of Forest Grove, and we bring it to them and that's what they put up? I mean, it's no different than any other sponsorship you get or any grants where they require you to put their banner. Sorry. That's where
I'm seconding.
Is there any other discussion on that? So, or one of so what is the direction moving?
regards to showing that we are sponsoring the event, but add to it that if we do get a banner, that a banner will be provided that you have to put up at your event.
We're gonna have to say that all over again. Sorry, Mariah.
I'm agreeing with the mayor, and just with more clarity, saying that anything digital or print could have our logo, that banners or other things, we could have a sandwich board sign or.
even in the social media announcements, you can have that added to.
Yeah, and I think that, however we want to do it is fine, but just making sure it's required that sponsorship is at the actual event and then the question I had is there any, I'm interested in increasing our TLT. Is there any, is anyone else interested in that? We're the lowest in Washington County. Yeah, go back to that slide, please. But so I just wanted, kind of looking at this as a revenue and it is right now a really well-built program that supports tourism. It supports our local businesses. Like this is, I think, valuable. So I would be interested in maybe just increasing it to 3%. So we're the same with our neighbor Hillsborough, and we're still lower than Beaverton, but I don't know how other people feel. I'm seeing consensus for 3%. Councilor Schimmel, okay. Are there other? I don't want to monopolize this discussion. Are there other questions or?
Can you go back to the pie? Okay, there it is. So all of this is split. Is this how we budgeted it, with marketing at 40%, sponsorships at 40%, or is that just how it worked out?
That's how it's budgeted.
Okay. Can we talk about adding the city club to the TLT expenditures, if this is going to be a separate conversation for the budget, or will this be a conversation for the budget season?
Budget?
Yeah. So are we going to talk about TLT rates again and how we're distributing it now or during budget cycle?
I think it's up to the question I think is if you add 0.5% to the TLT, it's going to raise approximately $25,000 to $30,000 depending on how many bed stays that we have in the community. I think the question that may stem from that is where would the extra funds go? You can apportion it like you have here, generally speaking. I will say on the marketing one, that one is a little bit more than it normally would because we did a campaign this year. Our bed stays were down, and so we did a marketing campaign. We hired the consultant that was on the one slide. So these percentages are not locked in. They will vary. What is known is that if you do an increase in the TLT, you will have some additional revenue. And so at some point, whether it's tonight or probably during the budget process, there will be a policy discussion about how you want to spend those monies.
That's the question. Do we discuss that tonight or during budget? It doesn't matter to me which one.
So I think tonight was just to get some comments on the TLT programs themselves, how they're being, how the programs went, if you want to make any tweaks to the programs, et cetera. If there's a conversation about a TLT and how you may want to spend that money, I don't know. I think you could either look at it potentially tonight, although time I know is limited, or certainly in the budget process, I think there would be a conversation about that. Councilor Gustafson.
Is it okay that we do later towards budget season? Okay, and then hang on, do not talk. Okay, here you go.
I was going to ask Councilor Gustafson if it makes sense to tie that also in with our goal and objective on the downtown redevelopment partnership. It sounds like there's a policy question about City Club, and then that tells into the budget, right? Does that make sense?
I don't know that we're going to get to all those conversations at the same time, because that conversation of what that partnership looks like and who's doing what and all of that, it might take some time to shake that out and not just all be decided at one meeting. So we can't miss the budget cycle. So the City Club will be asking, and I will be doing that in their place, for a certain percentage of TLT rates and URA rates and general fund rates. That will be a negotiation that's starting, but that will be separate than the partnership. That partnership will happen, but it'll be a conversation that Miles and Brian and the City Club are having to determine who's doing what, because that will play to a certain amount into the budget. And if it's not this year, it'll be future years. It's a growth process.
I can't buy into that we put budget before policy. I think we absolutely need to establish a policy on who we're going to allocate money for and how and when. I think it would be a poor process for you as in your city club work to partner with staff on something that goes into budget process. That totally goes around the council's jurisdiction on it. So I'm just saying I can't support that myself. I support the city club's work. I think it has value. But just like a lot of other nonprofits that generate their income without city dollars, but because it ties in with an objective, let's address the objective first. That we agree that the city club is vital to the money that we're generating. So I want to make sure clear that I support the club. It's the policy piece.
So I understand what you're saying. This is a progressive program, and we have already been in this program for almost a year now. And by now, many cities have already started assisting their Main Street program with finances, and the City Club has yet to receive any support from the city, from any of the extra grants that the city brings forth for nonprofits. Other nonprofits have received that. For instance, Centro receives a free building, and the City Club does not. Other nonprofits do not, and that is a huge amount of money. Our downtown is dying, and if we don't do something very soon, it's going to get worse very quickly. This is going to be an ask during budget season, and I don't know that we're going to be able to have a plan all figured out before that, because it's a lot. It's not a snap decision. It's a process. But I understand that, buying into it is difficult.
Maybe at this point we're getting to the elephant in the room. I would caution the counselor with stating my day jobs, the organization I work for, as part of your argument. That has nothing to do with this. Who I work for. I think that was planted. The previous council established the policy it has with the senior center. I regret for your case that they did not establish a policy for the city club. That's now for us to do. That's what I want to do. I absolutely do not support allocating money or you working directly with staff on a policy question that we need to address. But please leave Centro out of this. The senior center is a separate policy that the previous council established. If we want to address that separately, let's do that. But please don't mention the name in the context of something completely different.
My point is that not all nonprofits get the same benefit that others receive. We need this in order to move forward with our downtown program. If we're going to be restricted to wait until we have all of the arrangements made with the city, that's going to take another year. And it's another year that most people don't think that we have. So moving forward, that's going to be the big question. As far as working with Miles and Brian, this is a conversation that will be had. That's part of that partnership. That is expected, and that will move forward, just like every other city moves forward with their Main Street program.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it back to the TLT dollars. I think that there's definitely more work sessions and because there hasn't been direction from the council with Main Street other than the letter of support. So I definitely think that we can resume this specific topic at a later work session. My question to staff is, Miles, you're in the thick of it. Is there any feedback from people who have applied for any of the programs? Any feedback from them saying like, hey, this is a little, like this could be tweaked a little bit, or is there anything that you're hearing from our community about how we need to alter these things?
I think it's just really appreciated so far by the community and the community events.
Good.
We can definitely tighten it up a little bit. And I think that was the expectation going into it, is that the logo would appear everywhere, and just making that clear and following up on that.
Mhm.
So
Okay, are there additional questions or concerns? Okay.
I hear tons of positive things about it too. Everyone loves it.
It's real exciting. Thank you for doing such a good job with it. Okay, so I'm going to adjourn this work session on transient lodging tax revenue. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mayor, Council.
Oh, sorry, let me call this.
Oh, sorry. I thought you
Sorry,
already
sorry,
did, and you were
Chief.
calling us up to the
No,
front.
I got distracted. I'm going to call to order this work session of the police building ballot title review. And presenting is our Chief of Police, Mr. Henry Ryman. And assisting him is our Assistant City Manager and Finance Director. I'll now turn over to you. Thank you, Chief.
Paul is really in charge. He is the finance director. But our purpose tonight is hopefully to get council's consensus on a ballot language. I'm not asking council this evening to edit or making any substantive type of changes to the ballot language. The PowerPoint presentation that we are presenting this evening has changed from what you received in your packet. This afternoon, we received revised language from the council, bond council. The changes that the bond council recommended were not significant. However, since staff will use the changes in the ballot language, staff felt that we needed to present the new language to council. Staff apologizes for the late changes. Next slide. So a quick review on September 9th, 2024, at the council work session, council reached consensus to place the police facility on the May 2025 ballot. On January 13th, council work session, council reached consensus to place a $29.5 million general obligation bond on the May 2025 ballot. Slide. Begin our timelines. Hopefully, if consensus is reached this evening, we will present the resolution approving ballot language on February 10th. On February 28th is the last date to file with the city recorder, and at that point, we'll begin the 10-day challenge. On March 20th, the last day to file ballot will be the last day to file ballot language with the county elections office. The 10-day challenge must have been completed at that point. On March 24th, it will be the last day to file arguments in the voters' pamphlet. And on May 20th, we will have our election. Next slide. So real quickly, just to review, this is the ballot form that staff will need to fill out. And you'll see it's kind of small, but each section has a certain amount of words that we have to provide. We cannot go beyond the words that are allocated for either the title, which is called the caption, the question summary, and the explanatory statement. Next slide. You want to take over from here?
This really didn't change too much from the bond council's review, but general obligation bonds to replace 48-year-old police facility. That's 9 words, and that's the title, the caption that they're going to want to go with. Next slide. Question was 20 words. You can read the question there. So Forest Grove issued general obligation bonds not to exceed 29.5 million in principal amount for a new police facility. Why it says not to exceed is depending on how interest rates go or other things go between now and when we go to issue the bonds. We don't need to issue $29.5 million in bonds. We will not issue $29.5 million in bonds to get proceeds that we need, or we might decide to go ahead and issue them anyway and get some additional proceeds. The bottom section in black, that's boilerplate that's required by state law. It doesn't count towards the limit. What this basically says is the bonds are exempt from Measure 5. They're down in the bond section. They're not up in the general government, so they're not subject to the Measure 5 limitation. So when we tell them we want this much money, they will tax at whatever rate they need to get that money next year. So,
Can I, Mayor, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
Paul, if you would, maybe after each slide, see if there's just a general consensus or any concerns from the council about the language that's being used.
Let's go back to the title. Is there
Title.
general consensus for the title? A thumbs up or a nod?
Yeah.
I'm seeing consensus. No.
48 years is old enough. I mean, it doesn't, 48, but it doesn't seem very old to me. Yeah, I just wasn't sure that 48 years old sounded old enough, but I know it's really not even just that, it's the size.
yeah, it's the size.
of the facility.
And that's more the explanatory statement and some of the summaries and that we'll go into, provide more information. They won't let us use words like decrepit in there for some strange reason, so.
Yeah, I think there is consensus with the title.
Question.
And then is there any consensus or any questions about the question?
Suppose going back to the title, maybe, to your point, if that doesn't sound old enough, you might consider asking council to change this to current police facility.
So-
If you're not allowed to say inadequate, well, you might not be allowed to say inadequate, but current is not a value qualifying word.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I may,
Go ahead, Jesse.
there was kind of a couple options that were, because this is actually probably one of the most important ones of the work session is the title. And we were thinking, oh, we're missing a word. We still got one word we can use because we got 10 and we're only using 9. So there's a couple different ways. 48-year-old was one of the ones that we looked at. 1977 is another one, constructed in 1977. I don't know how that may resonate with the council. The third option could be, as Councilor Falconer was suggested, is you're not date specific either with 48 or 1977. You just say the current police facility, and then you can explain it later. So we were trying to find something that would resonate and capture right off the bat. But if this doesn't resonate, then we can certainly change it.
I see people and hearing people say they like changing it to replace the current police facility. Are we in agreement or? Go ahead, Jesse.
Sorry,
Why
one
were
more
you
thing
done
to add.
talking last time? You just keep.
When we get to the explanatory statement and to a certain extent the summary, what you'll see is a number of comments. Most of the comments stem from the poll that was done in 2018, where we actually messaged certain key messages with certain key words. And so we use those messages and we use that wording in order that it would resonate and in the level of confidence in which it was given. So it's very intentional when you get to the next one. The 48-year-old was one of the questions. It didn't necessarily resonate, but it wasn't a negative either. So it wasn't really a positive, but it wasn't really a negative. It was kind of right in the middle. There just wasn't any other messages that we could use where we could fit it within 10 words.
Well, I think that Councilor Falconer brings up a good point because how long's the bond? How many years are they going to be paying on this bond?
21.
Yes.
20 to 21.
So, just as a taxpayer, like, there'd be a little bit like, hey, it was only worth twice. There's like value-based decisions, right? So I'm in agreement to change it to current.
Okay,
And
we
I
can do
think,
that.
I think there's consensus to do that. Okay, how about the question?
This one was pretty much prescribed by General Bond Counsel. It has to meet a certain criteria with the state, and so this one's pretty well scripted.
Okay, so we
yeah.
can't really change it. Okay, so let's move on.
Next one, summary is where you've got more of what you can do.
There you go with the
Do with explaining it. So I'll let you read that page. I don't want to read it all.
Can we switch slides? I don't know if everyone's done.
What?
I'm asking if the council's ready to switch.
Next slide.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So as you go through the slide, I think as Jesse mentioned, the bulleted points are statements placed in order based on the polling that we took over the last several years.
Okay, is there another slide for the summary? Right.
No, because of the
No, okay.
174 is where it stops.
Okay. How do we feel about the summary? I have one thumbs up, one head nod.
Levy,
Twen-
it's
20
20
years.
years, but you always say 21 because sometimes when you issue them, when you're going to issue it and when the payments start, sometimes you go of like 20 and a half years. So you always want to say 21 just to allow yourself that
Grace.
the leeway and how the financing and when the payments start. So you always say 21 years in here. And, site improvements, demolitions, and furnishings don't sound exciting, but you've also talking about kind of what you're going to do with the money. So you've got to put some of those things in. And so as with everything, I would say the caption and the question we probably won't do much on, but we're always looking at tweaking these things slightly up until the last minute. So you may see some tweaks in the summary or the explanatory statement over the next between now and that, but they'd be marginal at most.
This will come back to council.
Yeah, let's get back to council
the
on
10th,
February 10th
February
if there's
10th.
consensus to bring it forward.
Yeah, is there consensus to bring this forward? Change the ballot title, right? And then
Mm-hmm. And the last part's the 500 measure explanatory statement. And this is where you've got, this is where you just put everything into it that you can think you need to put into it and talk about stuff in the order you do, what it does, what benefits you're going to provide, why we're telling the public we need to replace this facility. And we got 500 words, and right now we're at 492. So it's all, you probably don't have time to read through it tonight, but if you want to read through, Jesse's got something. Okay.
go ahead, Jesse.
So the second paragraph where that came from is one of the main themes that actually wasn't polled, but one of the comments that was made by the person that did the poll was one of the main reasons that police facilities fail is because there's an understanding amongst the public or a perception amongst the public that they work out of their vehicles. And therefore you don't need a building. And so I think we tried to, even though this wasn't polled, it was one of the prevailing themes from the poll was, why do they need a police facility? They work out of their vehicles. We wanted to provide some type of language that explained why police officers need a building. And so that's where that came from. So thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, going on along that same line, I was wondering, is it important to somehow make a distinction between creating space for interviewing victims and children? Like distinct spaces to do this, distinct spaces to do that? Because one of the things about our current police station is it's all done in the same space.
If we go to the next slide.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Where is it? Any other questions for staff?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering on this slide, but yeah. Okay, we can move on, Mariah. you see anything that you have questions, just wave your hand and I'll pass the mic. Yeah, you're good.
Just a minor, maybe just to be consistent with using or not using an Oxford comma would be a suggestion. That's all.
Where's that at, Councilor Falconer? Sorry.
I don't know if we have a standard that we typically use, but I think if we want to sometimes use a Oxford comma, then we should always use an Oxford comma. And I'm just noticing that the second bullet, dedicated private, doesn't have one. And before, I think I saw one, so I would just be consistent so that the language is always clear in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll review it for that. We do have 8 words, so we can use another word there if we'd like.
Okay, next slide, please, Mariah.
All right, I'm going to let everybody know how very well read I am. I can't even pronounce that word. And y'all know what word I'm talking about. Yes, thank you.
We're just talking about that word.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need to modify the word.
Yeah, we just mentioned.
Plain language, please.
I said that, yeah, that we need to simplify that word.
Yeah, I agree.
We can do that.
We could split that to equal distance.
Equal distance.
We have room for on this one.
You have a question? Yeah. No, okay. Keeping it real. Okay, is there another slide? Are we?
Nope. Where you see the red word.
Well, I just didn't know if you guys had anything else to present. Okay, any additional comments for staff? Is there consensus to bring this back to council on February 10th? Yep, I'm seeing consensus. Okay, thank you. I'm going to adjourn this work session, and then we will reconvene for our council meeting. I'm going to give us like a little bit of a break, a bio break before we start. Good to start? Okay. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Forest Grove City Council. It is January 27th and it is 7:07. Will the city recorder please call roll?
Councilor Gustafson? Here.
My mic on.
Council President Valenzuela? Here. Councilor Schimmel?
Here.
Councilor Falconer? Here. Councilor Martinez? Here. Councilor Marshall?
Here.
Mayor Wenzel?
Here. Forest Grove City Council meetings are located on the land of the Tualatin Kalapuas, who call themselves the Atfalati. They are now part of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. Will the council and audience please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item B on our agenda is public comment. Time provided for anyone wishing to speak to the City Council on an item not on the agenda or on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. The public comment period shall not exceed 30 minutes unless a majority of councilors present vote to extend the time. Zoom attendees may use the raise hand option to be called on. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to item C, the consent agenda. Items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will all be adopted with a single motion without separate discussion. Counselors who wish to remove an item from the consent agenda may do so prior to the motion. Any items removed will be discussed and acted upon following the approval of the remaining items. What is the wish of council?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Council President Valenzuela moved to approve the consent agenda, and Councilor Gustafson seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All of those opposed, same signal. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved by the Forest Grove City Council in a vote of 7-0. Additions and deletions. City Manager, are there any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Any proposed by council? Seeing none, we will move on to presentations. We have 2 presentations this evening. We're going to begin with a presentation from our Metro partners about the TV Highway Bus Rapid Transit Project. So I would like to invite Jess. Well, I think they're online. Jess is online. Or is everyone else online too? Is it just? Oh, yes. Some people are here. Okay, cool. Sorry. Thank you. Are you guys David and also
Kelly Betteridge, the investment areas
okay,
manager.
sorry, Kelly, you were on my agenda. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
I believe Jess is going to be running the slides remotely. Is that true? I'm looking at Jess right now on the screen.
No, I think Mariah is going to be running them from the room.
Okay. As long as somebody does, because I'm not plugged into anything.
Yeah, we got you covered.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us this evening. My name is Jess Deb. I'm a principal regional planner at Metro and the project manager for this project. And as you may be able to tell, I have a little bit of a cold. And so I am sorry to not be there with you in person tonight, but still wanted to represent the project. And I'm glad to be joined by Dave and Kelly, and I'll let them introduce themselves and then head into our presentation.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Betteridge. I'm the investment areas manager at Metro.
David All was capital planning manager at TriMet and project manager for TriMet on this project. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. All right. Mariah, you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is a project that has been before City Council, I believe twice, once with my predecessor, Aaron Key, who was the original project manager, and then our Metro co-chairs, our councilors, Gonzalez and Rosenthal, came to present this project probably over a year ago. So many of you were at that presentation, some of you weren't. And I also know that we've had Mayor Wenzel serve on our steering committee, and we've just had our first meeting with Councilor Schimmel as the new representative for Forest Grove on the steering committee. So tonight what we're here to talk about is this transit and safety study that we've been conducting on TV Highway, and in particular, this meeting is a lead-in to our steering committee meeting, which is on February 13th, where we'll be asking our steering committee to approve a locally preferred alternative. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So this project has been going on since April of 2022 was when our steering committee first met. We are trying to find a transit project that will improve the safety and travel experience for transit riders along TV Highway. We're building on a lot of years of planning and community identified needs, especially for safety and better transit. And our goal with this project is really to find something that can move forward with a project that gets funded by the Federal Transit Administration. Next slide, please. So why are we talking about the Line 57? TV Highway has more serious and fatal crashes than other roads in the region, and we know that safety continues to be a real priority for everyone in the community. In particular, there are a lot of pedestrian crashes on TV Highway, and many of those are located near transit stops. We know that folks run across the road right now to access transit stops without accommodation to cross, and feel and are not safe in doing so. The Line 57 on TV Highway also has the most daily boardings in Washington County. It's over 6,000 riders a day. And this line has had the highest bounce back in ridership since COVID-19. We know it's really a lifeline service, especially on the western end of the corridor in Forest Grove and Cornelius, where the only other transit service is provided by Ride Connection. Also, folks in the corridor who are riding the 57 are like this gentleman here in some places where there's no shelter, no seating, no lighting, and they are waiting on the side of the roadway, sometimes even without a curb between them and traffic. Additionally, the bus takes sometimes up to twice as long as driving, and we know that that provides a real hardship for people who are taking transit. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, our steering committee has been on a journey over the last 2.5 years. We're building on past planning efforts along TV Highway from Washington County, from ODOT, from Metro, and also from the city of Forest Grove with the Safety Action Plan, where a lot of the planned investments for that overlap really well with those of the transit project. Our steering committee adopted a purpose and need early in this project, which is the statement that we'll use in moving forward with federal funding as to why we're doing this project. We did a lot of work to figure out who lives in this corridor. We know that there is a higher percentage of both people of color and people who are low income than in the region and then the rest of Washington County. We did a lot of work to refine our project design after coming up with an initial design that was far outside what project partners really felt like was going to be feasible to fund. So we spent a lot of time figuring out whether there were different options to split the corridor, to phase this project, and we got strong direction from our steering committee that they really wanted to see a project from end to end, all the way from Beaverton Transit Center to the terminus at 19th and B in Forest Grove. This past July, steering committee again gave us direction to pursue a federally funded project after investigating some other options. And we also heard really strongly in our phases of public outreach that there's support for bringing these types of investment to TV Highway, especially in terms of safety and also in terms of just really increasing the dignity of transit riders in this corridor. So I'll hand it off to Dave to talk about the types of benefits that this project would bring to the TV Highway corridor.
Thank you, Jess. So we're pretty excited about the project and what it could potentially bring to this corridor. So I'm going to share some of that with you. So next slide. Thank you. So enhanced crossings at traffic signals at all stations. What that means is there's going to be some sort of a median island or a rapid flashing beacon or a signal of some sort. So pedestrians have a way to get across that intersection safely. That isn't always the case today. And there's quite a few places out there where pedestrians do need to make a run for it, and we really want to make that change. Looking at safety and accessibility, we would be making sure that there's a route that connects these stops to a sidewalk that is meeting current accessibility standards. Every single station is going to have a platform with a curb and a waiting area. That's a commitment that the project is making. As you saw in that picture up there, a lot of the stops in that segment adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad right away is pretty bad. There's no curbs. There's no anything that's protecting pedestrians or our patrons waiting there. We will also be getting rid of these eliminating the partial pull-out stop design. What that is it's when the bus pulls off into a bike lane, but it's not quite out of the travel lane either. And that's sort of this ambiguous situation where we have cars that try and squeak by or sneak by the bus and end up in a sideswipe condition or get into a tangle with another car, or maybe there's a rear end accident. This project is committing to either having the bus stop in lane or out of lane completely, but none of this kind of middle ground anymore. And let's see here, a couple more points. Okay, I also want to mention that we worked with ODOT and did quite a bit of work to make sure that we actually understood where those pullouts really need to be sited, taking a look at the history of crashes, the speed of the area, and there's a lot of other variables that we used with ODOT to do that. They developed a tool that was very helpful to us. And so being able to have some certainty around where we're making that kind of investment early in the project has been very helpful. Next slide. so we're going to be bringing a number of things that also will help improve the rider's experience in the corridor. So the stations will all have shelters, lighting, and seating, as well as real-time arrival information that lets you know when that next bus is coming. Riders are also going to experience a more reliable trip and a faster trip. Improvements that will help speed up the bus include transit signal priority at the signals along the route. That keeps the bus moving. All-door boarding, so we're looking at articulated buses with 3 doors on the side. All would open at one time. It really makes the boarding process go really quickly, and it shortens the dwell time as well. Another thing we're doing is we're doing some bus stop balancing or optimization. So we're making sure that the spacing and the locations of those stations are in the right places where people want them, and then where we have other stops that are less frequently used and might be just taking up time that riders would like to move a little quicker. That's an option for us to speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to make a couple other points here. Sorry. There's a lot of places along TVA Highway where the bus is stopping really quite frequently. And this is because we don't have sidewalks, or there aren't good ways for people to get to those stops. I think you've driven TVA Highway plenty to know that between Hillsborough and Cornelius, there's a segment in there that doesn't have any sidewalks. And so we have a lot of stops in that segment, for instance. And so the project is proposing to put some sidewalks in that area so we can actually not have quite as many stops. And when we do make an investment, people can safely come and go from that stop. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So another big thing that we want to announce is that this is going to be a 12-minute service. Right now, it's a 15-minute service, and so our project is committing to improving the headways. So that means the buses are going to come that much more frequently. And I think that's going to be a nice addition for the alignment here. I want to talk to you a little bit about what the FX service is. So what we're calling this service, now we've got one that's running on Division, and that's the FX2. We don't know what this one will be called yet, but we know there will be an FX service. We've been developing standards so we can roll out more of these within the region. We've been seeing really good advantages of these types of projects for our riders. Not only is it speeding up their trips, of course, and making it easier for them to get where they need to go quickly, it is also just improving the experience of using transit, and that translates to more people using the service, and it increases the ridership in our system, which is also a great benefit to us. So we've been working to put all of these things into standards and develop kind of a notion of how we want to roll these things out to the region. So TVA Highway is going to be in the position of being one of the next lines we roll out. 82nd Avenue is another one we're working on right now. So that's a pretty exciting thing. But we expect to use TVA Highway, 82nd, and Division to help us understand how to go about doing that with more lines. All right, so a little bit about the station location process. So as I said, we have gone through a process to try and figure out what stops are the best and most important ones to keep. So obviously the highest ridership stops, gives us a pretty good indication that they're being well utilized. We want to make sure that we're accommodating all of the connections between TriMet lines, primarily that are going north and south, but also to light rail, as well as with ride connection. There's other services out here we want to make sure we're making connections with. There are a lot of stops where mobility devices are heavily used. We keep track of what we call lifts. That's when the ramp is deployed on a vehicle, and we know when that happens, and so it's good information. And so where we see a lot of those lifts, we know that those are important stops for us to retain. And then there's the obvious things like, there's a grocery store, or there's a school, or there's a library, and so going through those priorities has been a fun and interesting process. So we'll reveal the map here in the next slide. So this is where the stops are in this current process. average spacing is about 1/3 of a mile. You'll see that there's a few stops in Cornelius that have some little black circles around them. We still have some work to do there, but I think we've gotten pretty good feedback from the outreach that we've done that the stops seem to be in the right place. And most of the folks that we've heard from feel like it's a pretty well-balanced a map at this point. So I think I'll hand it back to Jess.
Great, thanks, Dave. So I want to make clear that this map is part of what the steering committee will be voting on with their locally preferred alternative, and we're happy to flip back to this and take questions if needed later. But for now, can we go on to the next slide? So I mentioned earlier that part of the goal of this project is to move forward in the funding program called Small Starts, which is a federal grant program from the Federal Transit Administration. Right now, we have a cost estimate of right around $300 million for the entire corridor, and that's kind of the sweet spot because the cap of the Small Starts grant program is $150 million, which means that we're getting our 50% off coupon from the federal government for this project. But in order to be eligible for that, what we need to do as a region is bring forward the other half of the project funding. So the way that we're proposing to do that is what you see here on this pie chart. So we as regional project partners, that's Metro, TriMet, the four cities in the corridor and Washington County are planning to come together for $100 million. And we want to make a commitment to that amount for this project so that we can be really clear to the state that all project partners are in it together. And then we have an ask that TriMet is going to be putting in to the state legislature this session for $50 million in lottery bonds funding. We had a really productive breakfast 2 weeks ago out in the corridor with several of the state legislators in the corridor and also some representatives from the federal delegation where we talked to them about this funding strategy and got really good feedback. So this is what we're talking about in terms of how the project would get funded. Next slide. The timeline on which we need that funding is generally what's laid out here. It will take a little while for us to get from where we are right now until actual service begins in the corridor. Big transportation projects take quite a while. In the next couple of years, what we'll be doing is called project development, where we're getting from about 10% design all the way through to 100% where we can hand those documents off to someone to start construction. Part of that is also doing the federal environmental process, and you can see the markers along the way when we're going to be needing to pull together funding. Next slide, please. So as we move forward, our steering committee actions, I mentioned that what they're going to be doing next is approving a locally preferred alternative, which consists of that map, which tells us where the general station locations are, the mode, which is bus rapid transit, and then the alignment, which is the Line 57. We're also asking the steering committee to approve that high-level funding agreement that they will, as a body, contribute $100 million together as local and regional project partners. And I'll just buzz quickly through the next slide or two. After the steering committee makes that decision to endorse the locally preferred alternative and we move into project development, I wanted to make clear that the public process doesn't end. TriMet will take over at that point, and they will have two bodies that work together to inform the design decisions that happen in that public in that process. On the next slide, you can see a little bit more about what those bodies are. There'll be a community advisory committee that pulls together community members and is a sounding board for some design questions and outreach activities. And then similar to our steering committee right now, you'll have a policy and budget committee that is also leadership from the corridor. And next slide is the last one, just to say, right now, we're here doing this presentation anticipating that steering committee approval of the LPA and funding strategy in a week or in a couple weeks. This spring, we'll be coming back to this city councils for a request to you to adopt that locally preferred alternative and also to approve an IGA, which commits funds to the project development phase of this project. And then in the summer, TriMet would apply for entry into project development with the Federal Transit Administration, and we would kick off the next phase of the project. So that's all we have to share tonight. Happy to take any questions that folks have.
Okay, thank you, Jess. Questions? Councilor Faulkner, did you have one?
I do. I wondered if you had information when you were, you had sort of a draft of what the possible stops might be, and I was just wondering if you had some information about how those stops were maybe a difference about, especially in particular for Forest Grove. I guess what I'm really getting at is how many stops are being eliminated in Forest Grove.
Good question. Not a number I have off the top of my head. We can go back to the map if you would like to see it. The ones that we are currently planning to retain are those at U. What's listed as A and B row is the Rose Grove Mobile Home Park. Then at Oak Street, 19th, which is the one at the Safeway. Then Elm, Ash, which is actually going to move slightly from where it is today, and then the terminus at B. And the resulting spacing there is pretty similar to the average along the corridor. And you can see that throughout when you take a look at how far the spacing is. And these have come, as Dave mentioned, from a lot of data analysis, conversations with staff. This is a map that was approved by the steering committee for public outreach, and then in public outreach, we received pretty high scores from folks asking them whether these stops would meet their needs as transit riders in the corridor.
Councilor Gustafson.
So, just to confirm, these are less stops and they're spaced further apart than currently? Yes. Okay. And how is this going to impact those that are mobility challenged, having to go further to get to their stops when it's already a bit of a struggle?
Should I take it? We have a committee that we work with through TriMet. It's our Committee for Accessible Transportation, and this is a topic that gets brought up pretty often. And one of the things that we try to emphasize is that these projects give us the opportunity to speed up everybody's trip, and it comes with some trade-offs, right? And so a lot of the investments that we are making these trips or making these locations work much, much better with the shelters and with a lot of accessible improvements to these locations, ways to get to them safely, and safe areas to wait. So while we would like to provide as much density as necessary as stops for everybody to be as convenient as possible, we know that we have to ask everybody to make a compromise so that everybody can benefit with a faster trip. So they do participate in the work on these projects, and they help us understand what the goals are. And so we really do look at where homes are, for example, where there's a lot of people that have mobility devices that need to have a stop nearby. We look at the data, like I mentioned. Where are we really seeing a lot of lift activity and where aren't we? So if we see a stop that has a lot of lift activity, we ask more questions. We're like, no, we probably need a stop in that location. So currently, a lot of the stops along this stretch have been here for many, many years prior to our current standards. And so they're, some of them are less than 1/8 of a mile apart. And for our current bus standards, just a 1/4 mile is more what we're trying to do. And so it is a trade-off. It's definitely a trade-off, and it's something that we're trying to work through. But again, this can save a lot of time for a lot of people on the bus.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Jess probably will not be surprised by my question. So I really do value this project, the goals of safety and increased and improved public transportation. The east side of Forest Grove is a huge concern for the city, safety issues. And so in the last few years, we've really tried hard to get grants to lobby our congressional delegation for funds. So I'm just wondering, I'm just a very blunt person. I'm just going to spit it out. In the finance, the local match, like, are these projects that we've been able to achieve through grant options and different things, are they going to be, can we use those for our matching fund is my first question. Or like, is there some sort of way that we can do that, I guess? And then my second follow-up question is, if we move forward with connecting sidewalks on Adair, Mountain View, some of those same areas you said, how do we do it in a way that we have like a special secret sauce between Metro TriMet and the city where we're not redoing work, right? Like if we're improving sidewalk and safety and we already have those funds and we do it, like I don't want to waste more taxpayer money by like seeing you all come and like destroy it right after we put it in. So I'm just wondering, like, we have been working in good effort in concert to improve that corridor for our community. And I want to see collaboration and cooperation and the best use of financial resources to achieve goals that we have that are the same.
Do you want to take the financial question? I'll take the.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So good questions, and I appreciate that this is always something that you're really focused on because there's lots of opportunity for us to be very collaborative. And so, from a funding perspective, we have defined a $300 million project, and as much as any of the things that are defined within that project are things that might be delivered or might be in the budget for the city to already be building, those types of contributions could count towards the local match. But if it's outside of that, that's also a conversation that we can have if it's an eligible expense to sort of add to the project as an overmatch. So we'll get into some of those details as we dig more deeply into design. To your second point, as a nexus to that question, there's a very detailed design process where your folks will be designing or will be reviewing the design. And there's lots of opportunities to very clearly understand what is included and make sure that other projects that are perhaps outside of the federal project are being designed in such a way that they can be delivered either on their own or as a betterment to the project or whatever makes the most sense in terms of making sure that those dollars are being used appropriately and that there's not sort of ripping things out, as you were mentioning. You want to add any detail on the design?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's quite a bit of coordination that we're going to be doing going forward, and this is just echoing what Kelly's saying, is that we're going to continue the conversation, and the people in your jurisdiction, we talk with Brian all the time and Dan, they're going to let us know when there's projects that are overlapping and that we need to coordinate on. ODOT's been a great partner too. I know that you guys have part of ODOT, but also part of it's not ODOT on this alignment. So yeah, we're ready to coordinate, and anything that we can do to kind of improve how we go about doing it and making sure that any investment that is made is something that's a long-term investment. We're happy to make that happen.
Well, thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to make
Council
a comment.
President, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Everything looks really wonderful, but I do have concerns. I do have concerns about the stops that will be reduced. And 4 years ago, it was 4 or 5 years ago, with Brian and Dan, we did a tour, and I remember doing community engagement activities back then. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago. So I feel great that this is finally getting done because our community needs it. People on U Street, people on the Rose Grove that live there, this has been a nightmare for them. And as you said, many accidents have happened. So finally, after all these years, it's getting done. It's good to hear that.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thank you all for coming. Thanks, Jess, for coming. I hope you feel better.
Great. Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. Drive safely. Thanks. Okay, our second presentation is actually 2 presentations in one, and so typically we have 15 minutes. We're going to have 30 minutes for this next presentation. So I'm going to call up Washington County Housing Services Update. We have Molly Rogers, Jill Chen, and Emily Roots. So if you could come up to the center table, please. I think an SHS update as well, yeah. Right, all the stuff. Hello, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Wenzel and councilors. For the record, my name is Molly Rogers, and I am the Director of Housing Services for Washington County. I use she, her pronouns. Tonight, I am joined by Assistant Director Jill Chen, who's in charge of our Housing and Housing Authority side of our department, and also Emily Roots, who's our Communications Coordinator, focused tonight on the progress of our ending and preventing homelessness work. Slide after that. Great. I just wanted to share with you that since we last joined you a year ago, it's been a year. I think I had just started my job just a few months prior. So we've done it all. No, we were on our way. But we really realized we needed to take another look at our strategic framework at that time. Our department and the needs of the community had grown tremendously over the last 6+ years, and we wanted to do some introspective time through that. We ended up changing our vision, mission, and equity statements. I'm really thrilled to be able to share those with you tonight. These words and framing were really shared and crafted and honed by a variety of different audiences, advisory bodies, as well as surveys we've done, focus groups, many dialogues. We had poster boards in our office and several heated moments in our executive team. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to share with you that we envision a Washington County where everyone has an affordable home with the supports and opportunities each of us needs to thrive. Slide back. Oh, someone else is with. Oh, no, prior slide. We did bounce. And through that, the Department of Housing Services creates pathways out of homelessness, promotes housing stability, and invests in affordable communities for Washington County and our residents. 2 more slides forward. And to achieve our vision, we advance racial equity and increase access for all who face barriers to housing. We address inequities in housing opportunity while prioritizing services to populations disproportionately impacted by these disparities. These are our values that we commit to leading with. First of all, collaboration. We can't do this work alone. We work in partnership with the people we serve, other public agencies such as you all, nonprofit organizations, private businesses, and our neighbors. Accountability. We believe in transparency and being good stewards of the public resource. Responsiveness. We are committed to meeting the diverse needs of the community we serve and adapting in response to changing conditions. Equity. We center at racial equity and promote equitable access for all to an array of housing opportunities. Sustained impact. We take the long view and we make commitments to deliberate, strategic, and holistically sustainable approach. Slide. So we want to really honor that work and share with you that we have worked we're proud of the collaboration we have with Forest Grove and the work here. So this slide captures some of the highlights of the housing and shelter investments we have made in this community alongside. We have 306 total housing vouchers in this jurisdiction, which includes the supportive housing services form of voucher called the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance, or ARLA for short. And it also includes some rapid rehousing vouchers funded by Supportive Housing Services, as well as federally funded Housing Choice Voucher program. The outreach provider serving this part of the county is the Forest Grove Foundation. Although we have population-specific service providers for youth, which is Home Plate, immigrants and refugees, ERCO, and we serve the county as a whole. Casa Amparo is operated by Centro Cultural, is a bridge shelter serving families and medically fragile adults here. And this site was purchased by Centro Cultural through the very successful state Project Turnkey program, and the operations are funded by SHS. Through all these efforts, in close coordination with the Forest Grove Police Department and our Sheriff's Office, we were able to close the Highway 47 encampment and offered everyone there a place for shelter, path to long-term housing. And finally, I wanted to uplift the Valfrey at Avenida 26, which is an affordable housing project funded through Washington County's allocation of the Metro Affordable Housing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily and Jill. Well, Jill first, and then Emily to share more about the work.
Thank you, Molly. And for the record, I'm Jill Chen. I'm the Assistant Director for Housing Services at the Department of Housing Services in Washington County. I use she, her pronouns. I'm just going to touch a little bit on the housing services side, which is really focusing on a lot of the Metro Bond implementation, our preservation work, some of our home ownership, and a public using our public housing portfolio, as well as our rental assistance. Next slide, please. This is a large slide with a lot of dots. On there, you will see all those dots are where the Metro bonds have affordable housing projects in Washington County. The blue are the projects that Washington County itself has managed to provide, and the other colors are the ones from Beaverton and Hillsborough. In Forest Grove, as Molly mentioned, we have the Valfrey, and we're very excited about a new permanent supportive housing project that is also in Forest Grove. It's actually now changed. Briefly spoke with Brian about the location of this, and we have heard the community's discussions. But in terms of the larger scale and sort of stepping back where we are on Metro Affordable Housing Bonds, for the county, we have met every single goal that was set up from Metro in terms of the total production. We have 958 units with a goal against 814. We've exceeded our extremely low income units, as well as our units for families, as well as those for permanent supportive housing. So next slide, please. For me, it's very exciting what we've done. Plaza Los Amigos is one of those projects that is in neighboring Cornelius. This is one of the projects that was sponsored by REACH CDC and Bienestar CDC. It's 113 units. This is a groundbreaking that happened just in September 2024, and it was focused on families with the Latina community. The Metro Housing Bonds provided over 13.6 million. We also provided 16 project-based Section 8 vouchers that Molly was mentioning earlier, as well as our housing production opportunity funds for $500,000. This is one of the largest and sort of, I want to say, shining examples of what Metro Bonds could provide for our community. Next slide, please. In addition to our production of new housing for affordable housing, we are looking to preserve more of our existing stock that the Housing Authority own and operate. We are in the process of doing a renovation, a major renovation of 10 of our projects, consisting of almost 600 units, of which 60 are in Forest Grove. This is Parkside on Main Street, and Villager on Fur Road. Their renovations finished end of 2023 and are completely re-leased up and operating and functioning well. And you can see in the pictures, the major rehab included ADA modifications, plumbing, roofing, ventilation systems, and more. The project is expected to extend the life of these buildings by an additional 30 plus years. Next slide, please. The final sort of housing side I wanted to mention is our disposition of some of our public housing units. These are our portfolio of mostly single-family homes and small plexes. This is owned by the housing authority, but under severe or tight housing urban development control, and we have received their approval for the sale, and we are hoping to use this as an opportunity for our low and moderate income residents to purchase with some discounts, and we're working with our local community-based organizations. In Forest Grove is West Tuwalati Habitat of Humanity. The benefit of this is even as these units are being sold, our residents will not be displaced. They will all have tenant protection vouchers, and we have hired a consultant to help them move to find a better location for them that fits their housing needs. Next slide, please. Last but not least is our rental assistance. Molly referred to it earlier. This is where we're leveraging our federal resources. Our total rental assistance for this county is over $4,500. The Housing Choice Vouchers, or Section 8, is over $2,700. And we have made great strides in working with our Veterans Administration for supportive housing vouchers, the VASH, as well as with Mainstream Vouchers, which is supporting both residents with disabilities, non-elderly residents with disabilities. So this is a great opportunity where we're seeking to leverage our federal resources. And I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thank you, Jill. For the record, my name is Emily Roots, and I'm a Housing Communications Coordinator for the Department of Housing Services, and I use she, her pronouns. Next slide, please. So I'll be giving our homeless services update tonight, but I do want to be clear I'm focusing on the supportive housing services measure. That makes up the majority of our budget and was really what this presentation was honed to focus in on. We do also receive some federal resources through the Continuum of Care and some other funding, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'll be focusing on the supportive housing services funding behind our work. Next slide, please. So just to ground us, I want to share a brief story of hope. We talk a lot in this work about data and numbers and figures, and that's all tremendously important. And at the same time, the people that we're serving, it just can't be understated the value that SHS and affordable housing can have in someone's life. I had the opportunity to meet with Russell, who's pictured on the screen, a little over a year ago. At that time, he had recently transitioned from living in an encampment in Aloha to staying at a bridge shelter. And I was really excited to hear an update from him about 6 months ago that he had moved into permanent housing. And I just checked, he's still doing great. So that was really fantastic to hear. So think of Russell when you imagine all the different stories and numbers that we're going to walk through tonight. So a few highlights. First, I just want to share that we used 100% of the SHS budget. And I think it's really important to reiterate that because there's a misconception in the media that SHS is underspent and underutilized, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We exceeded our goal in terms of SHS spending, and we put those dollars to good use. That looked like 1,200 plus people moving into housing through SHS-funded programs, and that was a mix of either rapid rehousing or regional long-term rent assistance, basically different programs that offer rental assistance and case management so that folks can find stable housing. And we also helped over 4,000 people remain housed through eviction prevention and rent assistance programs. So that's folks who are on the cusp of experiencing homelessness, who have been served an eviction and they're able to stay in their housing because they receive that kind of bridging rental assistance funding. When you kind of put all the pieces together, we served over 10,000 people through SHS-funded services alone. So that includes all the things I just talked about, but that also includes outreach, shelter, and our housing liaisons who are strategically embedded in different systems of care to catch people who need housing services. Next slide, please. So a lot of work that's been happening behind the scenes and within our team, and what that looks like is tremendous growth from 2021 to 2024. We see that in terms of a real significant increase in case managers and outreach workers. We see that in significant gains in shelter units. The anecdote I like to share is that in 2021, we had no year-round shelter capacity for adults experiencing homelessness and really few options for families experiencing homelessness. So that 49 bed count in 2021 was specifically for families experiencing homelessness in Washington County for our entire region. And with that, we also had few housing options to refer folks to. So our housing capacity has grown tremendously as well. And as our services have grown, naturally our budget has also grown. You can look to the first couple years of supportive housing services implementation. That was our building, our foundational period. Particularly in that first year, we didn't actually receive Metro SHS funds until that spring. So the county did an intra-fund loan to support those early operations. Now we're looking at approximately $120 million budget. And I do want to draw your attention to the lighter blue segment. That's the lion's share of our budget, which is going towards that long-term rent and services. And that's a values-based judgment. We see that as an incredibly successful program that has a long-term impact in ending someone's homelessness. And it's where we are continuing to strategically invest our funding. That said, I think we're one of many local government entities that are dealing with some challenging budget realities. You can go to the next slide. And that comes with our recently updated revenue forecasts and collections. So we started this fiscal year with a planned budget of looking at, we had lost my train of thought. So if you look at the previous fiscal year, which is where all these outcomes are from, we anticipated receiving $109 million. Collections fell below that at $103 million. So right there, you're looking at a $6 million shortfall. Then considering this current fiscal year that we're in right now, the initial forecast showed $115 million. We received an updated forecast from Metro in December of 2024, and it was basically the lowest end of the forecast we could have anticipated at $98 million. And with that, we're looking at $16 million in reductions in order to get our budget to balance. It's a challenging reality for those of you who've been doing homeless services work for a long time. You know that we have at times had to operate within that resource-constrained environment, and we really remain committed to continuing to put our services towards the greatest possible impact that we can have in addressing the needs of people experiencing homelessness. And I just want to land with a little bit of just an emphasis on what an impact that SHS has had in our community. Through supportive housing services, we've been able to house almost 3,000 people, 1,800 households. In a previous model without SHS, most of the new people that we served was really through attrition. So being able to serve so many new people is truly game-changing. And we've also reduced unsheltered homelessness by over 35% in Washington County. And I know there's many conversations happening at the political stage, frankly, a little bit above my pay grade. But I can say what is written on this slide, which is that potential SHS measure reductions would impact this progress. Next slide. Thank you so much. We'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Council, yeah or no? Councilor Schimmel?
I'm just wildly impressed with the volume of effort and work put into the program over the past few years, and it's great, Molly, to see how you've made it your own as a director, and I look forward to working with Jill more in the foreseeable future on some of the housing development. And your Forest Grove impact is really understated, as I've seen it with the not just the numbers you shared, but the housing placements in Forest Grove. I know there's a large number of families and individuals that have made Forest Grove their home thanks to a generous ARLA program, and I think the landlord incentives that you've instated, put the Washington County program over and above the others in terms of recruiting landlords. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate that you've taken liberty with the volume of investment into population B, beyond the intention of the measure. So I have an affinity for population B. They're predominantly families and medically fragile. So thanks for taking that risk. I understand with the shortfall, there's some disinvestment in that in terms of rent assistance. So I know there's some tough decisions ahead, and I'm sure you're thrilled that Metro postponed their ballot measure, and I trust that opens the door for further negotiating on the terms, and I sent you a note ahead of time on some thoughts. I think it was a shame that they didn't quite put together a litmus test for what they referred to as most in need. If you compare your prototypical chronic homeless person next to, let's say, a single mom that's 8 months pregnant, homeless 5 months. You put those two next to each other, and who's most in need? So I trust that a true litmus test would be considered, as well as reevaluating the split between A and B. My theory would be that Washington County probably would probably resemble a 60-40, like I think where you are now, versus a 75-25. So I hope that might be a consideration by metros to give counties a discretion on their own split. Those are just a few thoughts, but I appreciate the volume of work and that you've done with the CBOs.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on, we share the desire to, we are not here to have value propositions of households or serve everyone. We know that eviction prevention and rapid rehousing far more cost-effective interventions, keeping people out of the system in their own home and all the other. That said, we also understand the percentage of chronically homeless individuals in our point are showing up percent of the total numbers, and our unsheltered is still around 30% of the total population. So the formula, I believe, was meant to be more of a funding allocation rather than a total household served. But we do hope we can track. I want to be able to have enough flexibility so we can be responsive to what the community needs are shifting, especially if the measure does get extended. That's a long time. Our community is going to change, and its needs are going to change. We have desires to better tap healthcare resources. A lot of the folks who are chronically homeless do need really long-term clinical and long-term support services. That is more costly, but that we believe the healthcare system should be paying a portion of that. So these things need to be able to sort of shift over time as we can leverage other resources and rethink some of that allocation.
And I've mentioned those suggestions to my Metro rep. So I'm willing to help with the advocacy to lend you more flexibility, more eligible expenses. What you need to, like you say, to capitalize on what the community needs.
I would love to figure out to change that formula so it actually shows what we have control over of those permanent housing placements. as that capacity, as opposed to us creating like some kind of division of how many people are coming into shelter that we have no control. So.
Any additional questions? Yeah, I would like to echo what Councilor Schimmel said. Just the amount of work that you have done and the achievements you've had. Like, we feel it in Forest Grove, and for our staff, like the partnerships we have with the county, just are huge. There's not a lot that we could do without you. So, thank you. Congratulations. I think that some of your statistics, like I know it's more than statistics, but those statistics are really, really good. That's well done by all of you. So I just want to say thank you. Okay. Thanks. Have a nice night. It's a shocker, but we have no public hearings, ordinances, or resolutions tonight. So we're going to move on to councilor reports. I'm trying to remember which slide I started. We'll start in the middle. Councilor Schimmel, and then we'll go to Councilor Falconer.
Can I have a break?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a break. We'll start with Councilor Falconer.
Sure. Not a lot to report. I attended the JWC and the BRJOC, so the Joint Water Commission, and the obviously, so Pete Truax and Rod Feets are still involved, and yes, I think I missed his name on my. Thank you. Pete will be the chair of JWC, and then Tualatin Valley Water District as the chair for BRJOC. They gave us an update on repairs at the boat ramp, and that the water level is slightly delayed from previous years because of that work. It required in-water work, and so they needed to lower that. And then they also gave us an update about a grant for hazard mitigation.
Thank you. Not more of a break. Okay, Councilor Schimmel.
Well, following up on my previous update on the CCE, sounds like there's a few things maybe from our goals and objectives that CCE would uniquely be able to support. One thing that they might be interested in that I know the library has a podcast equipment, but there may be some policy things that we need to sort out around that. I failed to mention that earlier in our work session, but we have had podcast technology that's unused right now. So I want to figure out how we can take advantage of that. Maybe give some CCEs some discretion. On the Economic Development Commission side, they are currently going through 9 building revitalization grant applications. So that program's being receptive, and group is looking through those, and then they'll send the recommendations to us. The Forest Grove Chamber had their State of the Chamber today. A couple key themes was the financial sustainability of the chamber they're focused on, as well as their new business support. Business development center, and my daughter actually has an appointment with them, so she's starting her own business, so she'll give me some little feedback on her experience. And then I'll lend credit to the Metro team who were here on the steering committee. But there's some financial obligations that are on the table right now, including $75,000 for the project design. That's in the next 2 years, and then $175,000 for construction between 27, 28. But that's all predicated on the funding mechanisms coming through. So executive orders could drastically compromise that. So we'll probably hear more about that a little bit later, and we'd have to sort out a path for that funding. So there's still a lot of work ahead on that, but the principal value, as I've kind of seized on from that project, is it saves lives. It literally will save lives, and I've been trying to track the pedestrian accidents between here and through Cornelius. And in Cornelius in particular, there's been a fatality from a elder female in a wheelchair, and then a exchange student. And in both cases, they were westbound. So that doesn't conclude they were Foursquare residents, but it tends to be westbound accidents in the evening. So I think the project's really important in terms of saving lives.
Great, thank you. Counselor Martinez.
Okay, so Forest Grove Senior Community Center had an open house Wednesday last week, and it was a success, smashing success, actually. It was well attended. It was wall-to-wall people. They all were provided with information at the same time to let them know when things would be rolling out and the timeline, as well as they could, and why things were taking a little longer than what they needed to. And everybody seemed to be very happy with the results and the outcome. And then Sister City meeting we had Thursday night. So there's some questions, and I know I've spoke to several people about that. So we're working on getting those rectified. And then right after that meeting, I went to the translators screening, and Counselor Schimmel was there as well. And it was a really good presentation they did, talking about difficulties for kids in families where they have to do the translating for parents and the barriers with that. So that's it.
Thank you, Counselor. Council President Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. So I attended the Library Commission meeting last Wednesday. So the first thing we did, we welcome our new members to the commission, and we held elections for the different officers. There's 3 ARPA projects that were funded. So the East End bathroom is complete, but they do need some new furnishing for the bathroom. And the other bathroom is almost done. The teen area partition almost done, and that will be communicated to you because we're going to celebrate that. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Donation, the library has very good friends, and they received a $50,000 donation that is to be allocated to the children's area. So there is this beautiful design. Someone is in charge of this, and it should be completed in about 6 to 9 months. The book sale was very successful. 5,600 books were sold. The next one will take place in May. It's for all of you to be attentive to that. The National Library Week is going to be from April 6th through the 12th. And again, it's something that I hope that we're all attentive to so we can be part of that. And that will be all.
Thank you. Counselor Marshall.
All right, so Parks and Rec, they voted on new chair. It actually is going to stay Brad Bafaro. Co-chair is going to be Joe Offer. As far as parks, Eastside Park is in a final design phase. Knox Ridge is basically waiting on signatures for that. The Parks Department has finished their leaf cleanup project. One thing that came up was the jail crew is now in limbo. The officer running it is retiring, and so they've been a big help doing it. So going forward, they're trying to figure out what they can do, if that's going to be something they can offer going forward. As we know, the tile for the pool is coming soon, so that'll be shut down very soon. Winter programs going on right now. They've started with summer planning for that as well. So they're doing a lot. They're going to be filling their time with during the pool closure with other stuff for the staff to do around the building. So they're going to keep themselves busy. But as far as that, I think that's most of it. And actually, lights were approved for NAMS for the field, and that'll be coming this summer, I believe, is what they were saying. We are waiting. Ann has set up a stakeholders meeting for the cost recovery plan, and she's trying to coordinate that for February. Get everybody together to kind of discuss and brainstorm on that again. So I'll keep everybody posted on that.
Yeah, good news. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gustafson.
A few things. I wasn't able to attend the open house, but I did have a meeting with Maria afterwards, and she did say that everyone asked a lot of questions, and it was a really good day. So I just missed it. And then to spring off of Counselor Schimmel and his comment about the podcast. The PAC also was interested in having a Facebook page so that they could promote their Festival of Arts. And I know that there's some, rules and guidelines around that, but the Festival of Arts, they needed to be able to somehow promote that.
Sorry.
It's okay. And that leads me into talking about Festival of the Arts. So at the last PAC meeting, we talked about the Festival of the Arts, and we were kicking off the planning for that for 2025. And talked a little bit about the Lincoln Park mural, which we'll start this late spring or summer. The Seven Guardians over by the library is still a bit of a trip hazard, so we're still trying to figure that out. And we're working on the plaques for the different artworks around town, so it can be known that it's the Public Arts Commission and the city that is one of the contributors to those things. And that's all I have for PAC. I was just appointed 2 positions. I was appointed to the National League of Cities 2025 Community and Economic Development Federal Advocacy Committee and the 2025 University Committees Council. So I'll be going to the NLC conference in March. And so I think we should all figure out who all is going. So if there's 5 or more of us, we can take advantage of the group rate.
Yeah, I don't think it would be 5 because we have it budgeted for 3 counselors and 1 mayor is what we have budgeted. So I don't think we'll be at the 5. Right? Yeah. All right. Any other comments? Okay, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to turn this on. My report might be a little longer than normal. So I've had a couple questions recently about how Forest Grove's projects may be impacted by the recent executive orders pertaining to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, what's referred to as Bill, and the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA. So I reached out to our federal lobbyists, who are CFM, and they clarified that the executive orders were revised to clarify that only grants stemming from the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure and Charging Program, I know there's an acronym there, but I'm not sure what it is, are on pause, and other grants under such programs like RAISE, Safe Streets, Reconnecting Communities, at least for now, are proceeding as planned. That's as of today. They wanted to be very clear that this is kind of the latest information. It is subject to change. There are other efforts associated with reducing the federal budget that may impact these programs later. But for now, here's how it looks for the city of Forest Grove. So we still have 3 requests in for what's called Congressional Directed Spending Requests, or CDS requests. Those requests are for TV Highway, 21st Avenue, and the Forest Grove Loop Trail. Those are still moving forward. That process has not been changed, so we're still applying for that process. We'll still be working with our federal delegation to try and move those projects forward. Similarly, the monies that were awarded to the city through that program, one was for low-income solar for $900,000. The other one was for TV highway improvements. which was $850,000. Those were both congressional directed spending requests. Those are still intact. We are still working on both of those. For low-income solar, we're working with the Housing and Urban Development HUD to make sure that we're certified and can receive the funding. With TV Highway, those monies actually go to the state, but they're earmarked for City of Forest Grove, and so those are still moving forward. One area where we are impacted is we were one of 17 area cities that did receive, was awarded a $15 million grant for EV charging stations. You might have heard our Light and Power Director talk about this a few weeks ago. That program is on pause and will likely be canceled. So the grant funds that we were slated to receive through that $15 million grant, and to be clear, that was $15 million for 17 cities. We would have gotten a portion of that, but that program is on pause. That's the National Electric Vehicle and Infrastructure Community Grant. So, Mayor, did you have a question? I saw that you were.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're
So that program is on pause. The city of Tualatin was administering that grant, and they have notified all of the cities kind of where that's at, and they'll keep us apprised. Light and Power also received a federal Department of Energy grid resiliency grant for $500,000 for wildfire mitigation. That grant has been awarded, but the money has not been distributed. That grant still appears to be intact. We have received no notification that we will not receive that grant. Neither was that part of the NVIEC program. So we are still planning on that grant moving forward. The city just last week received, and we'll be mentioning more about this soon on the website and social media, but we just received a grant last week for $1.435 million for Safe Routes to School. That was principally Greg Robertson from Public Works. Again, that funding does not appear to be in jeopardy. That grant has been awarded, but the money has not been distributed yet, so it's still waiting distribution, but we were fortunate to be selected amongst a very, very competitive project list. That's for the Mountain View intersection over by Neil Armstrong Middle School. One grant that we are in the process of applying for but have not applied is what's called a BRIC grant, or a Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant. The council will be hearing more about that soon. We're going to be talking about matching funds for that grant. It's a fairly large federal grant for our water reservoir project up off Watercrest. The Fern Hill and Maple Street intersection, that's not federally funded dependent, so it's still moving forward. Those MISTIP monies or county monies are still intact. Our TGM grant, or Transportation and Growth Management grant for TV Highway Access, that's also not dependent on federal funds, so that is moving forward. And I think that concludes all of the grants that we kind of have or are in process of doing right now. So as I find out more, I'll continue to update the council. But that's where we're at as of today. Thank you, Mayor.
Does council have any questions for Jesse on any of those things? I want to give an opportunity to follow up. Thank you for that. So I'll start with my mayor's report, but yesterday Senator Merkley held a town hall in Tualatin, and Mayor Bubenek asked a question about the $15 million grant. Right now it's on a 90-day pause. Senator Merkley, he said, like right now, all he can say is it's on a pause, but he doesn't expect, he, says that right now it appears that the administration is canceling all grants that have to do with electric vehicles and climate action. So, and that grant would have helped us put charging infrastructure in apartment complexes, public spaces. So that's and we don't really know for sure. 2 years ago, we were awarded the community solar for low income, and that would be on. So right now, that's still okay, but we're really unsure. I'll stick with the topic of Senator Merkley's town hall, and then I'll just work in reverse this time. Another Sorry. Another situation or thing that he brought to our attention is that there's a Lincoln Riley bill that was passed in the Senate, and it kind of the purpose of or what that bill says, how he contextualized it to us or explained it to us is that now, if anyone of any age, children to adults, is suspected of committing a crime. So I'm going to use the same example he used. A 5-year-old goes to a grocery store and is by like the candy, puts his hands in his pocket or her hands in her pocket, and then it doesn't. And they think that that 5-year-old stole candy, and they take them to the police. They pull out they turn out their pockets. There's no theft. That individual could be held in immigration or by immigration because it was suspected. Not because they found anything, not because they were charged, just the suspect. So that went through the Senate without going through committees. So things are rolling out really fast. And some things are going through the court system. You know, he mentioned like trying to slow down the process, but I think that it's important that we understand some of the things that are happening in our community and could potentially happen to our community members. So I wanted to update you on that. And then Councilor Schimmel mentioned this in his questions to Washington County, but it appears that Metro is going to delay the ballot measure to make some changes to SHS. And so, you know, I went to the MMC meeting, which is the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium. And, you know, our message really is like, we want collaboration. We want, you know, there's some things we're hearing about data being shared, and we want to be at the table. We want all the people to be at the table and to come up with something really good. Like, so it wasn't to, you know, some of us mayors wrote letters, and it wasn't to delay just for the sake of delaying. It was to delay to like really make sure there was transparency, community engagement, and collaboration and cooperation. Sorry, so that EV grant is toast. The transportation package, you know, they're looking, tolling is still not going to be, is on pause for 3 years. And the governor's not going to, but, you know, think the gas tax, like looking at that, or stiff. Anyways, registration fees, there's just a lot of things that are going to come out of that transportation package. I attended the retirement parties for 2 long-serving electeds in Washington County. Roy Rogers served for over 40 years. I want to say 42 years. He's the longest-serving elected in Washington County. He retired from Washington County Commissioners, and Jason Snyder was elected to replace him. And then Mayor Steve Calloway from Hillsborough termed out at 8 years. And so he retired. And that's why, thank you for the people who went to the translator showing. That's why I was not there. And then the last thing I have 2 things. But I also just want to say that I want to just say thank you to the council. I thought that the retreat, there was like lots of really good conversation happening. And I just appreciate people showing up and, you know, coming with ideas and talking and having, you know, what they said. And what I like to say too is like really good policy work is about having difficult conversations, multiple perspectives, and unpacking them in a way to create a policy that fits the needs of the most people. Like that's, you know, basically what I see our job being. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. Okay, and so with that, the council will adjourn to hold a closed executive session under ORS 1926602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. No formal decisions or actions will be taken. Representatives of the news media may not attend executive sessions on labor negotiations. And then do I read my next? Because we have 2 executive sessions. Should I read the other one too?
You certainly can. That's
I think
fine.
I have 2 informal.
Yeah, because we're going to be in executive session.
So we have 2 executive sessions. So following that executive session, the council will, the URA board will convene to hold an executive session, ORS 1926602E, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body
to negotiate real property transactions. And with that, I adjourn this meeting. So we'll go in the conference room.